Hi, Brad from Brad's AC Performance. This video is the installation video for the 850-600 E-TEC Gen 4, Gen 5. I want to show you something here real quick. You can see how much effort this is taking to turn. So that's the power steering that we're going to be installing, and watch the rest of the video. If you're one of those guys that's at the point where halfway through the day you got that pinch in your shoulders and your neck's bothering you and your back's starting to bother you, or your wife is complaining about she's tired of riding, this solves all of that. So don't let me get in your head. No neck pain, no back pinch, no lower back pain. Happy wife. Today we will be installing electric power steering assist on a Gen 4, Gen 5 Skidoo E-TEC 850. We believe this kit will also work on the 600 as well, but we have not yet verified that. We will, and it'll be in the printed text on the auction site where the parts are available for sale. So there are a few things of note that we need to take care of right up front, and that is, when you purchase one of these kits, there'll be two ways to purchase. With the pre-modified muffler and steering post, and without, which you can do yourself. So you need to make sure you watch the video through to the end, and I will show how to modify the muffler and muffler modification that is needed. And I will also show how to modify the shaft and get the assembly prepared. Just real quick, if you are running a Jaws pipe, you will have to mash the side of the cover right here to clear the ECU for the power steering. It's not much of a mod. I did it with a plastic hammer. The muffler will need a dent put in right here to clear the motor so that the motor doesn't run up against it and get hot. This, I had an earlier video and some YouTube comments about the dent in the muffler was that it was going to hurt performance. These are people who don't know what they're talking about. And to prove that, I have a muffler off an E-TEC 850 right here that I plasma cut apart. And the dent is going to need to be on the back side right here. As you can see by looking in here, there's nothing inside. There's a baffle on this side, which the exhaust comes through here, loops down, hits that baffle, fills this chamber, and exits out this hole where our dent's going to be right here. And that dent, as you could see in the earlier frame, is not that big. So with that out of the way, I have brought the 850 in and prepared it. You're going to want to take your handlebars off and put some protection on your dashboard so you don't scratch the dashboard. And to get the hood off, there's 5 screws and 2 plugs. These 2 plugs right here underneath the dash. Now, this is the dash cover. As you can see, it's got these arrows on here. They're telling you which way you have to pull it to get it off because of the way it's snapped on. So it fits down in here and snaps forward. These arrows are this way. You pull this back and it snaps and pops out. It's difficult to do. It really snaps in there hard. So once you get that off, you can get a flat bladed screwdriver and you can get right in the tops of these. Get in here. Give me a little close up. They've got a little nub on the top of this lock. You put the screwdriver on the top of that lock and you push down and it'll pull off. You get these 2 off. You'll then want to take the 2 chrome screws, and they're deliberately chrome plated as opposed to being black like everything else on the sled. Chrome is identifying that it needs to be removed to remove the hood. So you take those 2 screws out. There's a screw here and a screw here on the opposite side. Once those are out, and the hose clamp on the air intake has been loosened, it'll slide right off, and then I put it on the back of the table to keep it out of the way. So I've taken the liberty of removing all the exhaust springs and loosening the muffler. And one thing I want to say about the muffler up front is there is a, I'm going to call it paper mache guard, heat guard around it. These things are really delicate. They're $75 a piece and there's 2 of them. So be careful taking it apart, and as we go and proceed in the video, I'll show you how to do that. I think that covers everything. Let's slip this muffler off. I'm pulling it out together so as not to damage it. And we got it out without any damage. Okay, everything's out of the way. There is one 10mm hex nut bolt that goes through up here that holds this bearing in place that the steering shaft is on. And I've already got it loose. So all we have to do is unbolt from the chassis. So now we need to remove the steering post. And at this time I want to point out two things that are important to know. One, with the power steering kit, the kit will only work with the steering post mounted in the most forward position, the XRS position. There's another position you can get behind this that comes underneath the flying nun here. You can't use it in that position. You can only use it in the forward position. So make sure your sled has accommodations to do that. The other thing, this is the dog bone that holds the steering shaft to the rack and pinion. And it's a double heim joint, and this has a 6mm Allen here on the back. And you'll need an Allen wrench. Now the hard thing about this is getting the Allen wrench held so that you don't hurt yourself. But we found that if you take this and get it loose, I've got the bolts taken out of here, and I've got this loose. We're going to take this apart. Alright, so I've unbolted this. Alright, so what we want to do is get the steering post out of here, and to do that, instead of trying to take it loose at the pitman arm on the steering post, take it loose at the rack. And there's a 13mm nut behind, and then this bolt that goes through. I've already got the nut off. Oh, I don't. Got it loose. You hear it fall. Pull this bolt out. Take this loose. Pull this out. And out comes the system. And then you're going to use your 6mm Allen on the back of the dog bone, and then use an impact wrench to take this nut off. Now we'll move to the table, and I'll show you how to cut the shaft up and get it ready to go back in. Alright, so we're going to cut the shaft so that it will fit back in the machine and support the electric motor that is the power steering assist. You're going to need a tape measure, a marker, chop saw, these two couplers that fit in either shaft. And we'll get started here. So this is what we just took out of the sled. You want to put a piece of tape on here nice and straight so you can kind of keep the alignment going. And then you take that to the chop saw, and you're going to cut this piece here off. And I've got some instructions. These are just to give you some information. This is a list of parts. This will improve over time. And then I've got these two photos that show you what you need to do as I explain it. And I'll come back to these photos. So this part, everything we're doing on this part, we're measuring from the flat until we get to the final measurement, and then we're measuring dead nuts in the middle. So measuring from the flat, we want to cut it 5 1/4 inches long. So once this part's cut to 5 1/4 and you've deburred it, you're going to put this collar in here. And then you're going to cut this piece, is going to be too long, and we want to cut it to 15 1/8 inch. from the fish mouth. So from the fish mouth to there is 15 1/8 inches. Do not think that this is a good time to make this a little long and give you a homemade handlebar riser, because there's a kink in it right here and it'll throw the handlebars out of whack. So cut it at 15 1/8 inch. Install the coupler, and then you're going to take your motor, and the machine side, there's a machine finish side, and there's this side here that is unfinished. This goes towards the small part, which we'll bring down here and put together. And the finished side goes to the handlebar part. And you want to have these lined up. So one thing you want to pay attention to when using these couplers is that they have an Allen screw to lock them in place. And the shaft where it's splined has a valley that's cut into it, and that's where the Allen screw goes to hold this. So you're going to put this on here, back and forth, and get that Allen screw right in that spot. Same thing on the other end. So I got the two couplers on, and I found center for the Allen screw. And then you're going to take and put these pieces on like this. And then we're going to find where these need to be welded. And where they need to be welded goes like this. The front side of this bolt to the center of this pitman arm is 7 inches. So we need to come on a little more. Right there is perfect. From this bolt to the center line is 7 inches. Take and mark that, and that's where you're going to weld it. Now the other end, to find where it goes, it's 28 inches from the bottom of the flat to the center of the handlebar mount. So we're going to measure right across here. And it's almost a perfect 28 inches. And there's 28 inches. And we're going to put a mark there. And then you want to, with this lane here, you want this pitman arm straight up. Alright, so to finalize here, 5 1/4 inch cut from the bottom of the flat to here, fitted into the coupler with the Allen screw at 90 degrees towards the left side of the sled. This side is cut to 15 1/8 from the fish mouth, which is right here, to this, fit into the coupler. The tape is here so that we get our correct alignment and get this facing the correct direction, because it is kinked here. Allen screws are centered in the locking positions. We've taken a precautionary measurement from this bolt to the center here at 7 inches to the center of the pitman arm. That's the most critical measurement. And then the next most critical measurement is 28 inches to the fish mouth. We're there. So now it's ready to weld it, and then we'll put it back together with the same alignment. Okay, I've completed the task of welding the couplers into the steering shaft. We want to check our work. So I'm going to install this side. Oh, one other point of interest. You'll notice on the back there's a 1/4 grade 8 bolt. What I did was, after this was welded, I drilled and tapped and put this bolt in here. Just some added redundancy and strengthening. I'm going to slide this on, line it up in there. This is straight up and down at 12 o'clock. Now I'm going to try and see how this lines up, if I clocked it okay. And that looks really good. It's nice and level there. It's straight up and down there. We're going to be real close. I do have an adjustment factor that comes with the kit. It's an adjustable dog link that goes between the steering post and the rack and pinion. And then the last thing we want to check is, did we weld it correctly? It needs to be 28 inches. It's 28 1/8. Perfect. So the lower portion of the shaft needs to be reassembled. It takes these washers. Okay, so I got the rubber washers on here. I've got them greased with a little lubricant. And then this is a little different plastic carrier. It's got the high center, and it also has the 5/16 or 8mm holes in the aluminum. It goes on here like this. Be sure you grease this. Then this gets bolted in the sled with this new dog link that I'm providing that's adjustable. One end is notched. The end that's notched, that means it's left-handed thread, so you can identify which way to turn it to make your handlebar ski alignment correct. And then this goes here like this. All right, I've assembled the unit as I said I was going to, and you can see I've got my steering bracket, this black piece of steel back in place, these two 5/16 bolts. They're tightened up. This is the proper piece of black plastic support that I showed you, and I've greased it so that it moves smoothly. This is my dog bone. It's adjustable as opposed to the factory non-adjustable. So I have the dog bone already adjusted to the same length as the stock factory one, and I've tightened up the jam nuts, and I'm going to start there. And then if we need to make adjustments after we get to riding the sled to straighten the handlebars out, this is where you're going to do it. It's not the best or ideal spot because you have to take the pipe off to get to it, but it's what we've got. Another thing you can do is you can do an alignment on the sled where you put a 2x4 or a straight edge on the edge of the track, measure to the skis, equal lengths, check the steering. I did that. I still, after riding it, had to make an adjustment. Alright, next we're going to install the motor. Alright, so we got the motor into place, and you'll have about almost 1/4 of an inch of shaft of spline showing when you get the Allen screw in the valley. We had to install this and then jiggle it back up and keep turning the Allen screw and find that center. And you want to be really prudent about doing this. You need to find the absolute center and then tighten this up. And after you've ridden it one weekend, you need to come home and you need to check that. Make sure it's still tight. Next thing we're going to put in is the brace that keeps the motor from twisting. You'll notice I have one side cut off of it, and I've got nylon plastic on here to prevent the aluminum from being on aluminum. The flat spot goes towards the motor. The nylon goes up. It goes in like this. Don't forget to do this. If you put the top shaft on, you'll hate yourself. Just take a moment here and let you look at what the finished product's going to look like. There's going to be this bracket in here that's held in place by these bicycle brackets, and I'll go through this in detail. And then this is the bracket that we just put on. Remember, do not tighten any of the bolts except for the Allens that are holding the steering shaft to the motor. Everything else needs to be loose from the motor up so that we can get everything to line up and all fit together. Now I'm going to go back to the other sled and we'll finish assembly. Alright, we have these bicycle brackets and we have to put these on the nun. And so you're going to take these Allen screws out of here. When you get them out, there's this piece of plastic that allows you to adjust it to the size of the bar. The size we need is 1 thick. The thin one we'll discard. We'll put that on there. Alright, we've assembled the upper bracket that holds the steering post right at the motor. And one thing happened is that our redundancy bolt is not going to be able to be used as it's in the way of our bracket here. Now I've assembled this so that this front leading edge is higher and put this block together with these spacers and these bolts, but everything's loose. And these are going to go to the bicycle clamps that we installed. They're both installed now. And it's going to go right here like this. And this is going to stabilize the motor and keep it away from the power valves. So the only reason I put this bracket in is because there's possible contact with the power valves. So to assemble this, you take this and the kink, see how it's kinked? goes to the passenger or the right side of the sled. And this will force through and go right by those welds and fit in there. And then we're going to line our front end up. I'm looking down at the steering post and at the nut that holds the dog bone. And I'm lining it up so it's going straight ahead. And the skis even look straight. So with that lined up, I can then come up here now I've got to pay attention to where the handlebar clamps go. Make sure I get this on straight. You can see it, the handlebars look straight, the dog bone looks straight, we're lined up as good as we can be. At this time I'm going to want to go get my plastic hammer and tap this into place and run the Allen screw in. So just jiggling a little bit, it fell into place. So now we're going to move the aluminum bracket up and put the set screw in and make sure that that's lined up. Okay, so we got the Allens and everything all lined up. Got the steering post lined up. This is really important. There's a carriage bolt in the kit. It looks like this. And when you put this together, you got to move these around and line this up so that you're not to the edge of the circle. You want to see some material there so that there's room for this carriage bolt to go in. And the reason this carriage bolt goes here and is important is because that's right where the air box comes down. And when we had a 3/8 bolt in there, the castle part of the nut rubbed through the air box. This prevents that. And then we'll show tightening these bolts. We gotta tighten these bolts up, put a bolt in here, and we'll come back and we'll finish up. Okay, we're wrapping up here. And one of the things that we did was we forgot to put this top mounting bushing bearing in. We had to loosen these bolts up and get it up in position and put this in. So don't forget to do that while you're assembling it. And one of the last things you're going to do is I provide this clamp that goes on the shaft. And what this does is prevent the shaft from separating from the sled. So we're installing this ring clamp right here at the top of the nun. And what this does is if something should fail here, and the handlebars come loose, prevents them from separating from the sled. It's just a safety protocol that I've put in place. In the kit is an ECU with watertight connectors that we have to install. And I send this bracket along, it's pre-drilled and ready to go. And it goes right here. I took this bumper bolt out. I'm going to put it back in to hold this in place. We take and drill into the bumper with this. Tighten her up. And then run the wires. Alright, so we're going to finish up putting the ECU in. And I've got this bolt up here in the bumper, it's tight. And I've got the screw to the bumper here, our self-tapping screw that we provide in the kit. The motor wire, the actual power, the 12-volt power wire, which is red and black, this goes underneath the motor, comes up, plugs in. This is the servo sensor wire. It goes over the top of the motor and comes up here and fits in front. And you'll notice there's just a little bit of slack there, and it clears the pipe. We checked it, it fits real nice. Now the next thing you want to check before you put the pipe on and start buttoning things up and doing your wiring. And I will come back after I've got the sled wired up and explain what I did and how I think you should do it. The power valve is electric, and this is the servo right here. And by putting your thumb on this, you can move the power valve. And what I want you to do is check and make sure that that power valve is clearing the motor, not contacting anything. So you need to check that. Not had a problem, I just want you to be aware of it and check it. Alright, we're going to start the wiring portion, and I'll be back. Alright, I've taken the time to wire this, and what I did was I took the harness, I figured out which ones had to go where, and I will show you that in a second. And I took the white solo wire. There's two wires like this that are in sheaths, and then there's a white activation wire. The white wire has to go to a power source that works when the ignition is and the motor is running, but not to a headlight source. And I will show you how to do that. I also took the white wire and I took 4-inch lengths of black tape and taped it to it so it would follow along, and pull tied it to the upright. So coming over to the right hand side of the sled, there's an electric control unit. There is an aluminum bracket that the fuse box is on, and it'll accept a screw that's the same size as what holds the hood in place. And I took the steering electronic control unit and mounted it there, and I'm going to excite this wire and show you what it looks like. Alright, so it's at 100%, and we can push negative, and we can turn it down 5% at a time. And this will allow you to close the cover, and that's nice and safe in there. Keep in mind that if you mount that out where you can touch it when you're driving the snowmobile, that's like texting. It's too dangerous, that's why I mounted it there. Then on the other side of the sled, we have the main power wires, and I brought them across and up here and pull tied it in place, peeled the white wire off, and had the white wire come out at the top here by the steering post in this area here, not through these holes, but in this area here. And then the two wires I had to cut and fuse together. The fuse, and you can see here where I shortened the red wire, and I've tied right into the battery terminal, the hot lead coming from the battery terminal to the solenoid, which is right there. And I'll pull that out so you can see that. And then right below it is the ground. And I took the ground to the stirrup here and tightened that up. Now when you're doing all this, make sure you disconnect the battery from the negative side. If you have a Smart-Shox sled, you have to understand this. When you do the alignment on the front end and the battery's disconnected, you have to reconnect the battery to the system, and you have to have the alignment of the steering and the shocks at full extension before you hook the battery back up. You can also reset the system this way if you're getting a flashing code that there's a problem with the Smart-Shox. Same thing. Elevate the sled so the shocks are fully extended, steering in a straightforward position, disconnect the battery, wait 10 seconds, reconnect the battery. That way everything is talking to it and it's working properly, and you shouldn't have a code. If you have a code, you need to go to the dealer and have them clear it. One more thing, as long as I'm talking about the Smart-Shox sleds, when you align the handlebars to get them straight, you do not turn the tie rods to achieve that, because you want the potentiometer that's on the rack and pinion to be in the correct position. That's why I've included the adjustable dog bone, and I've already set this sled down on the ground and put a 2x4 along the track and aligned the front end and set everything, and then did the procedure with the battery, disconnected the battery, so this sled is ready to go. If it doesn't turn out and isn't aligned properly, you have to go to the dealer and they can do it. It takes about 10 minutes. On the G4, the only place I have found to pick up a live wire is underneath behind the speedometer. You pull this out, even if it's the big gauge, you got to get back here, and there's this connection right here. And that's where the power is picked up. Now what I've done with that white wire, I've also got a connector that you can connect to the white wire and plug into this. And if you've got other accessory items you want to run and you need to pick up accessory items, you can buy this duplicator. You plug this in and it creates two females. And the part number is right here. It's 515178. 153. You can buy that from your dealer. You can also buy these on eBay. And that's where the power is. If you see a connector underneath the dash, right up under here, and it's got 3 wires. Do not use that connector. That's for lighting accessories. That's why there's 3 wires. There's high and low beam. It has to be a 2-wire connector, black and red. Okay, so we have to modify the muffler with a small bend, which I went over earlier about it affecting the airflow, and we'll show that again. So we have to modify the muffler, and this is how I'm doing it. I'm using this small press that I got at Harbor Freight. Probably a lot of you already have it or similar. I put 3 2x4s here, the steel backer plate here, and set the muffler in here. Exhaust coming in here. This is the engine side of the muffler. I'm using a rubber bumper out of a Porta Power I have. You can use whatever works for you. And then we take and put this in here and put a dent in the muffler. And what this does is it clears the motor so there's no direct contact for the motor to the muffler. And this one I had bent earlier and it wasn't enough. And I wanted to get a little more. Okay, we're in the wrap-up phase, and the reason we did the alignment on the front end with the pipe off was so that we could get at the dog bone if we needed to adjust that, which we did. So as we're wrapping up, I want to talk about the alignment of the motor and putting in the muffler, and we need to drill a 1 1/8 or 1 1/4 hole right here in the belly pan so that cold air blows through here at the back of the motor so it doesn't overheat. So I picked this flat spot right here. So I realized after I put this together that I didn't put a hole in the shield. You have to put a hole in the shield so that you're not blocking the hole we just put there for cooling. And just check it. Make sure this pin is lined up here. And then with the muffler bolt spring combination, with the muffler in and the guard in place, this heat guard, we're going to put the pipe on, put the heat guard on this part, and then the top insulator goes on. But right now the motor's still loose, and I'm checking to make sure that my motor's not touching the heat shield of the muffler. I got it right where I want it. And tighten it up. We're now ready to put the pipe on and put the machine back together and get it down. So we're wrapping up. Before we put the pipe on, we went through and made sure everything was tight, made sure that the unit worked by plugging it in as I showed earlier on the control unit, what you're doing there. We put the pipe back in, we've got the springs and everything all on as they're supposed to be. I got to finish putting the hood on, and that'll wrap this up. I hope that helps you make a decision as if you want to put power steering on your snowmobile. If you have any questions, you can go to snowmobileshox.com and follow the links to your sled. Thanks. I'm Brad from Brad's AC Performance.